My friend, if you can't see what Ruto is doing to this country, my friend, then wewe tumekubarisha upige kelele ukisema tutam. Ruto is killing the future, the dreams and aspirations of our children in this country. When Kibaki came, he said free secondary and free primary education. Uhuru tried to maintain it. This week, Kenyans are receiving devastating news about the education system in Kenya. I want us to read with you what body, the news body, is giving to Kenyans this week. Alafu sikia Kenya wengine wakisema tutam. Ruto is taking all of us down. Let me read with you. News update from the Standard. New secondary capitation is 16,900, down from 22,244. Treasury body announces once government cannot sustain free primary and secondary education. Government cannot sustain. We are going to an era whereby government haita fund education tena. Mpaka wazazi nyinyi ndio mtakuwa mnalipa fee. This government is killing the education system. Ilianza na primary. Watu wakasema nduru. Mkafikiri mchezo. Sasa ni mambo na high school. Waja sasa msikie university. I'm telling you, Ruto is going with all of us down. Standard, this week, news again. Public universities funding. Yenye tusoma nayo sisi. Sisi yenye tusoma university, we know how that thing can help children from poor background. Treasury CS band hits at staff layoffs. Yani university, wafanyikazi wa university wanaenda nyumbani. Closure of satellite campuses. Ile campuses zilikuwa zimewekwa kwa maybe different counties. Ndio watoto maskini waweze kusoma karibu na nyumbani. They will be closed down. And outsourcing in underfunded institutions. Zitapewa mtu mwenye anataka kurani university in Kenya, even if you are a drug dealer, my friend, in your government, you will be given. Says government cannot meet sponsored students' needs. Sisi tulisoma because we are government sponsored. Tulikuwa tumeambiwa ukipita form 4, kama umetoka jamii maskini na upite vizuri, my friend, utasoma huko university. Your dreams will come true. Ruto is killing all that. For what? For affordable housing, because huko ndio madeals ziko. How can you build an affordable housing in Kirinyaga? Gorofa ya 6 unauzia mtu bed sita ya 1 million, hapo chini yake kwa hiyo gorofa plot inauzwa 350, mtu anachukua 500,000, ananyenga 3 bedroom, lakini nyinyi kwa sababu ni deals na kuiwa mashamba na machumba na simiti, you are just dealers. You are building those houses that Kenyans are telling you they don't need. Why don't you prioritize on education? Why are you killing education for projects that no one needs? Wakenya wamekwambia hataki hizi project, but because it is deals. What Kenyans have been telling you, waliomo na wasiomo, Ruto is going with all of us down. Wacha tuone wenye wanasema tutam na wametoka jamii maskini, how they will educate their children in universities. Let us see now.
Government can offer free education up to tertiary level. But why can't Kenya government do it? Out of every 100 Kenya shillings they collect as your tax money, 80 shillings is spent on debt finance. They are left with 20 shillings. That's a broke government. Because from the 20 shillings they are left with, they need 30 shillings for operations. They need 35 shillings for salaries. They're already negative. They need 15 shillings to send to counties. So what do we do? Because kids must still go to school. Pass the burden to the parent. That is why you saw the so-called new university funding model. That has led to a situation where almost half of the students who are meant to join university this year didn't join university. Hence, you see the collapse of institutions. More university is just one of them. Ask yourself, when did the rain start beating these institutions? When government stopped remitting capitation? They are all facing a cash crunch. Just accommodation alone, go to the University of Nairobi today. How many students are sleeping not in the halls of residence, but in the lecture theaters? Many students are sleeping in the lecture theaters. How many students are squatting? One bed is shared by 3 students because some are not able to afford to pay for the hostel fees. Why? Because of the economy. And I'm telling you, it is because of this odious debt.
The other thing I want to do in education is basic education. Article 53 is very clear that every child is entitled to free and compulsory education. Black and white. And a child is anybody under 18 years of age. They are entitled to free and compulsory education. That's why the focus will now face on the schools. The other day, we were in Parliament at my committee, and we asked the TSA people, how much would it cost for you to ensure that every child in the Republic of Kenya, from Moyale to Mombasa to wherever, has the right access to a teacher, the teacher-student ratio or the teacher-people ratio. They give us a figure of about 800 million or so. You added some kind of money. It's money that's within our grasp.
That's per year or per what?
They don't know per year. You increase the budget should be increased to about close to 1 billion shillings a year. They'll be able to cater for that. So that is something that the government can do very easily. Right now, I've got a motion in the Senate demanding to know where 19 billion shillings, 19.7 billion shillings, was taken in January of this year through the salaries of judges. Their salary allowance spiked by 19 billion, then went back in February to the normal. For president, for whatever, those so-called people and whose salaries have to pay directly from the consolidated fund. That provision shot up by 19 billion.7 over and above where the 300 million that they come out every month. So the question is, where did that money go? So those are 19 years of ensuring that our schools have got all the teachers. We have trained teachers. We have people who want to learn. We are not getting them to me. They want to fix education by giving the TAC the money it requires to employ teachers. This issue of politicians going to funerals to employ teachers like they're selling medicine for, what do you call them? They're selling medicine for caps in the mouth to which can make the teeth grow. We are going to do that. We just need to fix that.
Jioni ya leo, serikali inasema haiwezi kufadhili elimu ya bure kwa shule za msingi na upili kwani bajeti yake haitoshi. Waziri wa Hazina Kuu ya Kitaifa John Mbadi akisema kuwa mzigo ni mkubwa kwa serikali kufadhili kiwango kamili cha ruzuku ilhali bajeti ni finyu na matumizi yake ni mengi. Mbadi alikuwa akizungumza alipofika mbele ya kamati ya bunge kuhusu elimu kwenye hatua ambayo huenda ikawalazimu wazazi kubeba mzigo zaidi wa elimu kama anavyotuarifu Melita Uletengesi.
Misukosuko katika sekta ya elimu inaendelea kuchacha huku sasa waziri wa Hazina Kuu John Mbadi akisema kwamba mchakato wa ruzuku ya shilingi 22,000 kwa shule za sekondari umeyumba, kwani serikali inaweza kusimamia shilingi 16,900 pekee.
If you look at the total budget for the year and you divide by the number of students we have in this country, instead of 22,000, we are funding up to about 16,900 shillings. If we work with 22,000 per child for senior secondary school and the 15,000 per child for the junior secondary school, and we work with 1,400 plus per child for free primary education, you will get higher figures than what is in the budget.
Hii ina maana kwamba wazazi watalazimika kutoa pesa zaidi ili kukidhi mahitaji ya masomo ya watoto wao, huku wabunge wakiitaka Wizara ya Elimu na Fedha kusema ukweli kuhusu hali ya elimu nchini. Siku chache baada ya mkaguzi mkuu wa hesabu za serikali kudai kwamba pesa zililipwa kwa shule hewa katika bajeti ya mwaka uliopita, waziri wa elimu Migoso Gamba naye alipokea maswali mazito.
For example, we talk about Bomet High School, received 50 million. Bomet High School does not exist, but you send this money through Tenwek.
And the ministry has left the responsibility of providing infrastructure largely to NGCDF, which has limited resources.
On the issue of money going to schools that do not exist, that is a criminal offense. It is not something that anybody can defend. And if that has happened, then we'll pass the information over to the DCI and that process can be done.
Aidha, wabunge vile wametilia shaka mfumo mpya wa KEMIS wakisema kwamba wanafunzi wengi hawajasajiliwa, shaka ikiibuka kuhusu ruzuku ya shule za kiufundi.
Many schools are not receiving capitation equivalent to the number of students in their schools because of KEMIS or NEMIS. It's a big challenge so that schools are operating on deficit. Many students who are in those schools are not getting what they are supposed to get.
Kwa sasa kamati ya elimu imesalia na maswali kuhusu ukweli wa hali halisia kwa ufadhili wa shule.
So, after 20 years, a successful free primary and secondary education, saizi ni kama imefika mwisho. So, according to CS John Mbadi wa Treasury, ni kuwa watakat capacitation ya watoto na 5,000. So wamesemwa hawataweza kusustain. Then anaendelea kusema kuwa masomo ya university imewashida kama serikali hawataweza kufund. My question to John Bedi, for the last 20 years kumekuwa na serikali zimekuwa hapo na zimekuwa zikifunction. Hizo system zote umeongea kuhusu about free education, secondary, primary na sponsorship ya university imekuwa ikifanya vizuri Kenya. Ni nini hiyo mmekuja nyinyi mkashidwa? That's why Kenyans are calling on this government and calling it incompetent government. Let me shock you. State House ilikuwa kwa budget ilikuwa imepewa 4 billion. So walikuwa wameitisha 4 billion ikete for their need. But very unfortunate, so far the same financial year, State House has paid 11 billion on the same. As we are speaking, headmaster wanadhirita kuwa sasa hawana kitu kingine ni kufuga shule, na umeona watoto wakigoma kwa kukosa chakula. It is very unfortunate, na ni vizuri tuwakumbushe if wameshindwa na kazi parking and living to give another person chance akuja amend hii mess ambao wanafanya.
An educated nation resists dictatorship, but an uneducated nation obeys blindly. Mr. President, where does Kenya's future stand? Niaje wase, leo tuongee facts. President Ruto spends over 106 billion Kenya shillings every year on bursaries and education funding. Yani, in other words, that comes to 1.7 trillion spent over the entire 16 years of CBC schooling. Yet back in 2002, and with a national budget of only 300 billion Kenya shillings, President Kibaki gave us free education within his first 7 days in office. Today, with a budget of 4 trillion, free education is still out of reach. And let's be real, we don't need all this overlapping bursaries and funds. At 32 billion in university loans, 30 billion in university fund, 20 billion in county bursaries, 20 billion in CDF bursaries, 3 billion in presidential bursaries, and 1 billion women rep bursaries. Mr. President, instead of channeling these billions through boards like CDF that consume millions, especially in per diems, air tickets, benchmarking, and sitting allowance, why not take this 106 billion directly to schools as capitation for each student? Make education truly free, like during the Kibaki era. Because let's be honest, Mr. President, your expensive model is pushing students out of school. Not because they're not bright, but because they just can't afford it. Mr. President, think about the future. Don't fail Kenya, and don't fail the next generation.
Learning institutions are set to close earlier than planned owing to financial crisis facing the institutions. Head teachers say they can no longer operate owing to the failure by the government to disburse capitation fee. In the meantime, the Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers (KUPPET) has warned that parents will be required to pay extra school fees starting next term to cushion learning institutions against the funding crisis. Mary Mwoki with the details of that report.
For nearly a year now, tensions have been simmering between the Ministry of Education and teachers, with teachers' unions consistently accusing the government of failing to release funds meant for the operations of public schools on time. And now the continued cash crisis threatens to push the education sector to a critical breaking point.
Schools must be ready for parents to pay for their children next term, because we cannot have back and forth kind of communication from the ministry.
At the center of the crisis is student capitation, a crucial financial provision by the government that enables schools to function day to day. These funds have been delayed, slashed, or not disbursed at all. School heads now say they are barely getting by, and the little they receive is a drop in the ocean compared to what is required.
Meaning, at one point, the schooling system will collapse, given that in the previous years we also have undisbursed funds.
It means that this time they have not sent any capitation to schools, are merely coping with the circumstance, coping.
Several school principals who spoke to Citizen TV but requested for anonymity for fear of reprisals say the situation is so dire some schools have shut down earlier than scheduled owing to their inability to afford food, staff salaries, or even basic supplies like chalk. This comes a day after the Education CS announced that the government will not release any further capitation funds until the next term.
However, we've not been able to do the actual amount that is required, and we are working with Treasury to ensure that the shortfall that was not released is released, and come third term, the full amount will be released.
It's a structured way by the Minister of Education to continuously defund the system, and they must come out to speak on this. If they are not responsible, then Treasury is responsible. As Parliament, we actually did work on the budget, and we gave out money for Minister of Education.
Jana nimesikia serikali inatangaza kwamba hawana pesa ya kupeleka kwa mashule yetu. Sasa kama hizi pesa ya shule ndio imetumika kutembea, kupanda mandege na kupeleka michango mingi kwa mikono kwa wananchi, na mashule yetu haina pesa.
The free education program was meant to bring equality during the late President Mwai Kibaki's administration by ensuring every child had a chance at learning. But today, that vision seems to be fading fast.
Enyewe, Ruto must go. Enyewe, Ruto must go. By the way, Ruto must go. Enyewe, Ruto must go. Wash fire, Ruto must go. Enyewe, Ruto must go. By the way, Ruto must go.